And Dave, over to you.
Well, so I'm going to talk about DeepSeek, and DeepSeek could be a podcast on its own. In fact, I was just briefly saying, "Ooh, we could do one of here," but there are so many that I'm going to send links to. You can go watch it. DeepSeek has made a big deal. It's actually been out for a couple of months, but it just made sort of big recognition. It's big deal for a couple of reasons. One, it's from a Chinese company. It is a non-for-profit research institute, but and it's open sourced its models and all this other stuff, but it is clearly within the Chinese model. When you sign up for the service, it says all data is kept by the People's Republic of China. I'll talk a little bit about, I'll send a video on how you can actually run it all locally, so you don't even have to be connected to the internet to use it. But so that's one. But the big thing that came out of it was the bigger models from ChatGPT and how they sort of ingest the entire world of music you're looking for. They're talking about taking billions of dollars to do this. It's a high-end process, and really only Google and OpenAI, Microsoft can play the game. DeepSeek claims that it did it for $6 million. And not only did it do it for $6 million, it's outperforms or at least matches the performance of the latest models from the others. So that's sort of one of the things you're going to hear about DeepSeek is, wait a minute, what's going on with this business model? Do we have to put billions of dollars? And the stock market went. And you saw things like NVIDIA, which makes these high-end chips that China does not have access to. But OpenAI, their stock market tanked. OpenAI, Microsoft tanked. A lot of these tanked because suddenly there was this idea that maybe we could do AI differently and cheaper. That's a big thing, and I won't go into all the technical ways of doing it. But what I wanted to show, particularly, I wanted to show Mike, and I'm actually going to show it. So everyone who's listening on the podcast, just no, I'm going to narrate my way through this, but you can follow along at home if you want to. If you go to DeepSeek and you set up an account, I happen to create a separate account, Gmail account, not connected to me anyway, because we're paranoid. You just get this sort of, it looks like ChatGPT. It says, "Hi, I'm DeepSeek," and it's got this area where you can put in a query, like what was Mike Eisenberg's contribution to librarianship? This should be fun. And I'll even spell it properly, and it'll all work out. At the bottom, you'll see this button that says DeepThink R1, and a button says search, and etc.
It's still not spelled right.
Which one? Librarianship. Thank you. So if you now, I'm clicking on this and highlighting this DeepThink 1. When we run this query, not only does it give you an answer, but it starts with what is called chain of thought reasoning and prompting. It's showing you its work. It's actually working out like, oh, I need to figure out who this is. I mean, it's kind of, Mike, it's kind of using the big six to sit there and say, what's my task? How do I break that task down? What information can I find out? How is it advocacy here? Ooh, I should include this. And you're actually, this isn't the answer. You can hide this and never see it, but this model forces it to walk you through how it makes these assumptions so you can see where it made the wrong assumption. And that's this concept of chain of reasoning. And this way, this chain of reasoning is what AI companies are increasingly using to refine and test their models and expand their models. The difference here is that a lot of that is human labor. And human labor, not always in the most ethical and well-responded version of human labor. Here, they're using AI to help AI come up with its reasoning. And it's having really positive effects. So here it said, Mike Eisenberg's made a significant structure. He's got the big six models. He's advocated for school libraries. He's been a leader in the field. So it gives a good answer. But what all the benchmarks and testing say is, it gives a good answer, as good as you can get in these other models, but it shows its work if you want it to. And like I say, this is, if you ask it, people have been playing around with, is it shaped by Chinese propaganda information? Yes, it will avoid lots of controversial comments. It is a product of China. It's, as I say, they're very clear that they gather and store your data in China. Probably more clear and direct than all the companies that say, yes, we're storing your data on clouds around the world for us. So it's not particularly different in that impact. But if you're really worried about it, you want to train the model, you can load it on your own machine and run it locally, and you can look at the model. This model, what's interesting is things like ChatGPT and others, they build what are called nodes. In essence, they go and they look at all these different, make agreements and connections and whatever, and they come up with parameters. Most of the larger models are in the hundreds of billions of parameters. Those parameters are different ideas and how they connect in terms and phrases, right? Sort of the brain of it. And when I'm searching this, I'm using that X billion, 100 billion parameters. What DeepSeek has done is they've used the big one to train a little one. So they take all these answers and they run it through a 7 billion parameter model, and it gets almost as good. And the difference between these parameters, these big numbers, is billions of parameters, you're going to need a data center and a lot of computing power. 7 billion, you can run on your PC. And if you train it in a 1 billion parameter that's still performing very well, you can run it on your phone. And so they're building cheaper, they're building more efficiently, they're performing at all the benchmarks with a lot lower compute need. And it's in some ways, it's like we starved them of these high-end chips, and so they were more clever. And not only does it show its work in the search, they published the model, they published the process, they published the algorithm, they published the parameter list, and so they've done it in the open. And this has really started a conversation not only about business folks about what are we investing in, but in the technology sector about maybe we can do this differently, and in the information science world about what does it mean when we can have these, more efficient parameters in terms of power usage and heat and carbon usage and all these other things. We're making as good output with much fewer resources, which consumes a lot less energy, a lot less compute time, and a lot less money on the back end. So there'll be lots of links that I'm gonna send up from this is what it is to here's how to install it locally. If you want to try it, you can install it, turn off the Wi-Fi, disconnect the plug, and still work with it. And it's the current model going on in the AI community and going on in the sort of the tech field that's watching it. And so it's really New York Times has an article about it. If you want to read it at that level, you're going to find lots of popular press that are talking about this. And the reason they're talking about it comes down to it shows its work, it does it cheaply, and it did it out of China. Those are the big highlights of what's going on. So there's my show and tell for the day. And once again, I apologize for those of you who didn't follow along, but go to deepseek.com and you can give it a try and see what it's doing.
So I think I'm really interested because I think one of my big critiques and kind of what I talked about last time, is that like Chat GPT is a large language model, and therefore it's not really thinking, it's just putting words together that make sense. And so, right, like, so I wonder, does DeepSeek know who the first Black person was to integrate schools in Alabama at the elementary school? Because it is thinking through this, right? And so I liked, what the listeners couldn't see as it was starting to think about the answer about Mike. It would say, oh, wait, Mike came up with this, or maybe Mike did that. And everything was kind of phrased as a potential answer. And then it kind of needed to suss it out some. So it was interesting to see that process of it thinking.
All right. So give me the query again. Who was the first?
Black student to integrate elementary schools in the state of Alabama.
By the way, guys, I'm going to put this up as a video, as an extra video thing. So people, listeners, you will be able to see it. We can do that now, and we'll add the video.
All right. So I'm going to run it. And the thinking is pretty expansive. And once again, it's something that the AI researchers are working on, which is how do you build in this feedback and this cognitive loop? It's not just about explainable AI. It's also very much about sort of, getting it to think through issues. Should take a look at new events. There's Arthur and Lucy was the first Black students to attend the University of Alabama. I think Civil Rights Act in 1964. Need to look at these key figures. I'm just giving you highlights of the text that's coming out.
Yeah.
Wait. Alternatively, maybe Huntsville. Yes, I think, Sony Heford the fourth.
Ooh.
And so I'm guessing that as
Sonny
my
Herford,
colleague is
Fifth Avenue.
It beat it. It beat ChatGPT, Beth.
Well, it certainly did. And I think what is really interesting to me about these results is that its first two results were the answers that I got from ChatGPT, Linda Brown versus the Board of Education, and then authoring Lucy, who is at the university level.
Right.
So and that's certainly what ChatGPT said. So yeah, I'm impressed to see that thinking, because it definitely seems like it went several steps past the answer that ChatGPT was able to give us.
And it also gives a tremendous context of the whole issue.
Yep.
It's correct, and it gives that whole context. It's very impressive. My question to you, Dave, and maybe you don't know it yet. The way they do it, are they borrowing content from the other AI services?
So the way they're training their model is not through doing large ingesting. They're taking big available parameters. So in essence, Meta and Google and whatever, they're going and doing this big ingestion, and they're coming up with their parameter model. And yes, what DeepSeek did, my understanding is they took these models that were publicly available.
Okay.
Meta makes them open source as well. And they used those to train their model using different techniques, that have been proposed in the AI community. They just went and did it. And it turns out was extremely successful. So yes, they're building on top of all of that ingestion work, as I believe.
Wow. All right. Well, we certainly will. If it's not the next episode, it'll be the one after that we delve into this for a whole thing. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Beth.